Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and today we've got a full slate of updates for you. This is the 103rd episode of Hawks Latest presented by FanArt, so hopefully you guys have been enjoying the ride. We're past 100, heading into the preseason, which actually starts in a few days. But today we got a packed episode for you guys. So training camp is officially underway. It actually got started 2 days ago. And this year's Hawks roster looks very different from the one we saw just a season ago. When training camp was getting started at this time last year, the core remained the same, but Atlanta's had some great additions this offseason that are now practicing with the team. It's super cool to see. We're going to be breaking down what happened over the first few days of camp, including quotes from Quinn Snyder, Trae Young, and Kristaps Porzingis. We're also going to look at Risacher's continued development heading into year two and what a Hawks newcomer specifically had to say about him. And to close things out, we're going to be diving into a blockbuster trade proposal that was proposed by Dan Fable of Bleacher Report. It's very, very interesting. I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot to say about that. That deal would send Giannis Antetokounmpo to Atlanta. And while it's obviously unrealistic because Atlanta has their roster set, at least for this upcoming season, you never know down the line what could happen, and so that's going to be something we're going to explore and we'll talk about at the end of the video. So there's a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's waste no time and jump right into it and talk about how 2 days ago, just one day after media day, which I was there and I covered, Hawks training camp officially tipped off at the Emory Sports Medicine Complex, the official practice facility for the Atlanta Hawks. For the first time, the new look roster all hit the court together. It's so cool. We haven't gotten a lot of footage, like video-wise, from the Hawks social media team, or really in general. But it's cool to see, after all this offseason of talk and rumors, and then them finally coming to the Hawks, and just all the talk this offseason, finally getting to see it on the court is super cool. Immediately, one thing stood out. Covering media noticed a small but symbolic change inside the practice facility. Is like the first thing that they noticed. I was not there. I'm not all the way there in the media ranks yet. It won't be long, I promise y'all. I was at the coaches clinic. I was at which was actually at the practice facility. I was at media day. I'm not there to cover training camp, but maybe next year. But the team added all of these flags near kind of the entrance to the court. It's to recognize the 11 international players that are currently in training camp, because the Hawks have several international guys, and so they want them to feel welcome, feel at home. So they have all the flags from all of the different areas of the world that their Atlanta Hawks are from. This is one of the most globally diverse rosters the Hawks have ever had, so it's cool to see them kind of adding something to make them feel welcome. That's awesome. Throughout the day, though, of that first day, players and coaches were available to speak with the media both during, before, and after practice, and that's something that's the structure of it. That happened in the second day too, but we're going to mainly be talking about what was said during that first day of training camp. Head coach Quinn Snyder shared his impressions after the first full team session. And one of the main takeaways he pointed out was the size that this roster now has, and just saying how different it was. Snyder said, quote, "Seeing Zach and Kristaps come into the gym, we have size there with those guys. It's good to see. That can be impactful." I mean, it's clear that Snyder's focused on this added length and height as a real weapon, both defensively and offensively. I mean, that comes as no surprise. If you want to win in today's NBA, you got to be able to shoot the three at a high clip, and you've also got to be tall. You've got to be big. You can't, limit size, in order to, be excelled defensively. The Hawks ranked in the bottom third of the league last year in rim protection and defensive rebounding, and that is going to shift with all these new additions. Adding Porzingis, a healthy Jalen Johnson, and continued growth from their second-year forward Zach Langley could shift that narrative quickly. The development of Zach is going to be crucial, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later because of what Porzingis said. But now let's go ahead and move on and talk about one of the most anticipated interviews, I guess, from camp. It came from Trae Young himself, because Young caught up with the media after the team session, and he he's been the face of the franchise since he arrived in 2018, and he was asked directly about this year's roster and where the team stands heading into the new season. Stuff we're all curious about. He kind of touched on at media day, but we got a little bit of a closer look during his media availability during training camp the first day. First and foremost, Trae made it clear that the vibe is different this year, and that's always good to see because the Hawks were under 500 last year. He said, quote, "The vibes are really high. The best part is we're all on the court. I don't look in the training room and see anybody out there in the training room right now." For a team that has dealt with constant injuries in recent seasons, especially last year, that is a significant shift. That is something that, changes pretenders into contenders. He also emphasized the importance of Quinn Snyder's system and the team's buy-in, everyone kind of buying into the culture, stating, quote, "Coach wants to put in his basic principles that he wants us to follow, to be a part of all year, and focus on defensive things and offensive rules that he wants us to focus on." Young didn't stop there. He spoke at length about the new roster, specifically the chemistry that he hopes to build with his new teammates. He said he's been watching basketball nonstop, film, highlights, games, and paying attention to where these new guys like the ball, where they prefer to space out or how they can complement his playmaking. All important things to a floor general like Trae Young. It's good that he's doing his due diligence there. On expectations, Trae was clear. This roster is talented, and there's no hiding from that pressure. And especially in a wide-open Eastern Conference. He said, quote, "Sometimes when you can bring in new pieces and talented pieces like we have, it can bring a fresh new energy, and obviously expectations are higher than what they've been for everybody, us included. We're not going to take that lightly." It's good to see that Young is not taking that lightly. And perhaps the most telling moment came when he was asked if this was the best roster he's ever had since he's been on the Atlanta Hawks. His answer, he said, on paper, probably. I don't think that's a bad thing or a diss to the other teams I've been a part of. Kudos to the people upstairs who made some moves. But right now is the present, and we've got to take advantage of it. Finally, he spoke highly of rookie Asa Newell, the guy that we're all really high on. I actually wrote an article about him yesterday, kind of highlighting about what he told me at Media Day, because I got to talk to him individually. But Asa's already kind of impressed all of the Hawks during practice, during this training camp, especially Young. Young shared a funny story saying Newell stripped the ball from him during one sequence, and he joked afterwards, quote, "You're not going to get too many of those, Rook," but Trae praised Newell for, the energy and physicality and willingness to listen and learn, calling him a player with a very bright future. That right there is very high praise from the franchise star, the guy who is pretty much the face of the Atlanta Hawks right now. Newell has a bright future, and I'm super excited to see him hit the floor on his rookie year, but I'm also very excited to see how Trae Young grows, not just as a leader, but as a point guard, as a player in the NBA next season with the best roster he has ever had. Something that is starting in just a few days. We are right here, ladies and gentlemen. So speaking of bright futures, we just mentioned Asa Newell, but Zachary Risacher has all eyes on him going into his second year after finishing second in the Rookie of the Year voting last year, which he probably should have won. Zachary Risacher contributed to winning more than Stephon Castle did, and that's always the criteria they try to use against Trae Young. It's funny how they kind of, pick and choose when to use that winning criteria, but nonetheless, he finished second in voting, and he has a very bright future. This 20-year-old forward looks poised for a leap in his second NBA season. Veteran Kristaps Porzingis, who was one of the offseason additions, he joined the Hawks this summer. He shared his thoughts on Risacher after practice. We haven't really heard a lot of what Porzingis thinks about some of these guys on the roster. During Media Day, he really talked about Trae a good bit, but we learned what he thought about Zachary Risacher just a couple days ago in training camp. The two actually faced off this summer at Eurobasket before becoming teammates. That was really interesting to kind of keep up with all summer. I know if you've been keeping up with this channel a whole lot, we covered Eurobasket very in depth, and that was super fun to cover. And we had Risacher, Krejci, and Porzingis all suiting up for their respective countries. Porzingis believes Risacher is heading towards a big year after seeing what he can do in Eurobasket. He said, quote, "He is young, he is hungry, he's running, he's getting to the rim, he's cutting. He's the type of player that you want to have on your team. You can tell that he wants to learn. He is listening. He's paying attention to everything, and I'm here to enhance him and hopefully make his life easier." That's great to hear from someone who really hasn't had to be much of like a vet leader in his career, but is expected to be in that role this upcoming season on an Atlanta Hawks team who's actually the third youngest team in the NBA. We learned that a few days ago at Media Day. This is exactly the type of mentorship that a guy like Zachary Risacher is going to need alongside Quinn Snyder's coaching staff and really just everyone within the organization. Last season, Zachary Risacher had a very good rookie year. He played in 75 games, averaging 12.6 points, 3.6 rebounds, and just over an assist per game, while shooting 45.8% from the field and 35.5% from three. In the second half of the season, I think it was as soon as January hit, then on, he was shooting over 40% from deep, easily the highest among rookies, and just showcasing that he is a very efficient, at 19 years old, because that's, last season he was 19 years old, having that kind of efficiency and displaying that kind of growth in your first year is such a big sign towards your future development and, really just how impactful you can be down the road, especially for an Atlanta team that's looking to contend as early as next year. But they stayed true to their timeline, so Zachary Risacher can grow and he can have those growing pains because we have guys now that can take over for him if he's ever struggling, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, some of these guys that we picked up. He led all rookies in field field goal percentage, ranked third in scoring, and was among the leaders in made threes. His offensive rating of 112.3 was the highest of any Eastern Conference rookie with at least 65 appearances. So he was definitely in some elite company. I'm expecting a huge, leap out of him in his second season. Probably, like, if I had to put a number on it, he averaged 12.6 points last year. I think he can probably get that to over 15. I think he can probably average like 15.2 next year, and maybe shooting high to say like he can average like 17 a game. But I have seen those projections elsewhere, with Porzingis anchoring the middle and helping to space the floor, just really being an all-around impactful player. Risacher will likely see much easier looks and more freedom to operate, which is going to be huge for his development. If he takes another step forward, the Hawks could have one of the best young cores in the NBA. I think they already do, but Risacher's development as a former number one overall pick is really going to determine whether they do or not. And finally, what you've all been waiting for, we have to talk about the blockbuster idea that caught fire this week. I can't go anywhere like on Twitter. I can't open it without seeing someone reacting to this. I think it's really caught a lot of attention. It was proposed by Bleacher Report, Dan Fable specifically. It's a four-team trade scenario that would send Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the most dominant forwards really ever, to the Atlanta Hawks. So here's the structure of the deal. The Hawks would receive Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Charlotte Hornets would receive Onyeka Okongwu. The Milwaukee Bucks would receive Jalen Johnson, Josh Green, and a mountain of draft picks stretching from 2026 through 2030. The Portland Trailblazers would be in that deal as well to receive some future draft picks. So let's be clear. This is only a hypothetical. This is not any sort of report for me. This is me kind of seeing something on social media and wanting to talk about it because I thought it was very interesting, especially, after the Giannis rumors had kind of died down. When the Giannis rumors were at the peak in their offseason, it was very valid for us to talk about it on this channel because Atlanta was one of the top suitors potentially for him, just considering the amount of assets they had and, just overall team fit, and Giannis coming here would make a ton of sense. We talked about it a good bit this offseason, but, that certainly died down because it's been clear that Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee, but there's always the chance that he requests a trade. They would only move him if he requested a trade. But that said, the Bucks have been eliminated in the first round in back-to-back seasons, and, patience in Milwaukee is wearing thin. All these official rosters have been announced, and Milwaukee's looks absolutely terrible. Like, that is not even me trying to be funny. If you, cover up Giannis Antetokounmpo with your finger and then, look at the rest of the roster, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's led by, Kyle Kuzma and Gary Trent. It's quite the roster, and, Giannis might grow a little impatient. If such a deal were to happen, it would immediately vault the Hawks into, I kind of think they're contenders right now, but they would be an undeniable contender with Trae Young, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Kristaps Porzingis. It would form one of, the most dangerous trios in the NBA and overall roster, because the Hawks wouldn't be gutting a lot of depth in this hypothetical trade. They're losing Jalen and Onyeka as players, and then they're parting with a bunch of draft picks. But, real player depth, you're not losing a whole lot when you're adding a guy who averages 32 and 15 and 6 or 7 or 8. It becoming a massive cost, just in terms of chemistry, just what the Hawks have been building, it would be breaking up their timeline for sure. Sacrificing a rising star like Jalen Johnson, a strong defender with some potential in Onyeka Okongwu, and, a decade's worth of some sort of draft flexibility. There wasn't too many specifics on whose pick was going where. So, but as Dan Fable, who proposed the deal, put it, getting Giannis is worth the logistical bumps thereafter. And honestly, I can't disagree too much. This is, one of the most dominant forces in NBA history. He's an NBA champion. He's a two-time MVP, defensive player of the year. Just an all-around dominant player who's still kind of towards the end of his prime, I'd say, but he hasn't showed any signs of regressions. So would it make sense for Atlanta long term? That's the big question. But for now, it's just an idea, just a fun little idea. But it shows how the Hawks are once again becoming a team that people see just as one piece away from contention. When these national media outlets were posting the picture of from Hawks Media Day, when they were showing, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, when those three were taking pictures together, and people were responding this team is just, one piece away. That's all I kept seeing, one piece away. And so if you really think that's true, then that one piece could be Giannis Antetokounmpo at some point down the line. This isn't something that's going to happen anytime soon. But to recap, the Hawks training camp has begun, and we have lots of storylines storylines to follow. Quinn Snyder sees the size advantage on this new look roster, and that's something that's going to pay dividends, especially in a playoff race, in a tight Eastern Conference. Trae Young is embracing higher expectations and leadership. He's doing it very well. It's been an awesome summer for him. It's going to be an even better regular season. Porzingis is mentoring Zach Risacher. And yes, the Giannis trade chatter is still there. It's not something that has a lot of validity, but it's something that is still there as always. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Hawks Latest. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update here on the channel. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about that Giannis trade proposal? At this juncture, I probably would do it, but that's obviously not something that's going to happen. The Hawks are confident in Jalen and Onyeka. They don't want to break up the timeline too much. But what do you think about, Porzingis mentoring Risacher and Trae's comments and Quinn's comments? Just let me know all down below. But once again, I'm Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and I'll see you guys next time.